Hey, all you diesel heater folks out there. Looking to do a 1-year update here on this SILVEL diesel 12 volt heater. Been using it for about a year. I don't use it every day, but when I'm out in the garage kind of working on a project, I do run it. It's ran probably up to 8-10 hours at a time. Maybe ran about 10 gallons total of diesel through it over the last year. Had zero problems with it. It's been a great little heater. When it's super, super cold out in the garage, I do use my 220 heater on the wall back there to kind of help get the garage up to temp and bring everything that's in this garage up to temp. And then I'll shut that one down because it's a 220. And I'll strictly use the diesel heater, and it has no problem, maintaining a temperature out here. Even if I'm only out here for a few hours, this thing, running full bore just sips the fuel. It takes a couple of days out here working on projects to really get that tank down to where I need to top it off. So after about a year, like I said, zero problems. I've got the 30 amp power supply, just the 120 to 12 volt 30 amp power supply. I know I've gotten a lot of comments on, what if you lose power, the thing can't cycle down properly, and those folks are right. I haven't had that problem yet, but I want to try something new today. I've got a couple new gadgets. I want to give this a shot, and I want to see kind of how it reacts to the power switches and how much power it pulls. In the last video, if you guys haven't seen the install video where I installed the exhaust port through the wall and got this thing going for the first time, I'll drop a link to that video here. But if you want to watch this one, what I'm planning to do today is fire up this unit on a Milwaukee M18 Top-Off. These things are extremely handy. I don't even know if it's going to work. If I've metered kind of the power usage of the power supply during the initial startup phase when you're using the fuel pumps clicking and the glow plugs on and the blowers going. And according to what the power meters say on the 120 volt side, this should handle it, but we're going to find out today. And I built this little transfer switch here. This is just kind of a homemade thing. So basically there's two power inlets. There's a power cord on both sides. This one right now is going into the Top-Off, and the other power cord's going into our line voltage from the wall. And then the power outlet down here just takes power to this unit through the power supply into the unit. The switch is actually relative to which cord the power is coming from. So in this first test, I want to use the M18 Top-Off to see if it'll power this up and get it going full bore. And if there's a problem and I need to switch over to the line from the wall, I can flip that really quick without having to unplug things and plug them back in. This is not a permanent installation here, but it's kind of an experimental thing. The other thought I had is if maybe the Top-Off won't handle the startup cycle, I was thinking of maybe, running this on the power supply with wall power the way we've been doing it for the last year. And if, and I only run this when I'm out here working on something. So I'd be right here if we lost power or if something malfunctioned with the power supply. But in the event that I lose power from the wall, I can have this ready to go to where all I have to do is turn this Top-Off on and then flip the switch and immediately have power going. So this thing can do a cool down and go down, through its cycle that it does. So maybe try it in a couple of different configurations. And then this power meter here, I'll put a link in the description to this. It came from Amazon. It was maybe $14, $15. I do get a small commission from following the links from the description here. It's not much, but it does help, with some of the setup, with cameras and stuff like that maybe I can get a little bit of help. And if you are interested in something like this and you want to go to Amazon and maybe try something like this for yourself. But I had one use in mind for this when I bought it. And I'll do this in a different video, but I was looking at what it takes to run just the bare essentials in our house during a power outage on my small inverter generator. I have a big generator and it has no problem running everything, but we've lost power a couple of times overnight. And in the wintertime, I'd like to run our gas furnace. And I've used this to determine how much that gas furnace pulls. And it's very, very little compared to what I thought. So I was able to test running that smaller inverter generator overnight, not only for sound, but for also fuel consumption reasons. And these things are invaluable when it comes to finding out what a different appliances in your house pull wattage wise. And it'll tell you peaks, and we'll go through all that, but it'll tell you the most power it used at any given time. It'll tell you how long you can even put in what you're paying per kilowatt hour, and it'll calculate the cost over a certain amount of time that appliance is running. So very, very handy little tool, but we're going to plug this in and use this on this test here. and kind of see what we get during the startup phase, and then when it's full blast running and the glow plug's no longer on and the fan's going full speed, kind of what it pulls and what it wants to see for power. So we'll get into that right now. The other thing I'd like to talk about before I get started here is I've gotten a lot of comments on my exhaust, and I'll show you a picture of the exhaust. It comes out of the bottom of this heater, runs slightly uphill, and then out through the wall. And I've had a lot of concerns in the comments about condensation and having too much water in the line and plugging this thing up. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not a diesel heater expert. I wasn't last year when I installed it. I just kind of did my own research and installed this the way I thought I should. But I've learned a lot since then. I was an auto mechanic 25 years ago, and I kind of do understand how condensation and exhaust systems work. And kind of what the gist of it is when you start your car on a cold morning and you notice that steam coming out the back, that's the humidity in the air that your car engine is burning, and it's coming out as steam, and then it hits the walls of that exhaust pipe where it's cold, and it condenses back into visible steam and comes out. And if you notice, if you drive your car long enough, it stops happening after a while. That moisture is still in that exhaust, but the temperature of the pipe is hot enough that it's not condensing it while it's still inside the pipe. It's actually coming out, getting into the air on its own. And I have a theory that that's what's going on here, because my entire exhaust pipe is in this garage, which is heated. So I don't think when this thing's up to full temp and that exhaust pipe is extremely hot in that short little run that it has, that it's actually going to condense any of the moisture that is coming out the exhaust side of this heater. But I don't know that for sure. So what I'm going to do on this video is I will pull this off. You know, over the summer, I'm sure whatever condensation was in there evaporated out. But this has been ran probably a total of 16 hours this season, but it hasn't been moved from its orientation that it is right now. So what I'm planning to do on camera, first time I've never done it, is pull this off the wall and take that pipe and aim it down and see if we get any water out of there. Pretty confident that there's none. I've never had a problem with it exhausting out of the back of the house, but we'll see what happens here. And I do think that if I don't get any water out of that, I'm probably going to continue to operate it the way it is. I wouldn't do this outside with it running uphill because of the exposure to the cold temperatures, but I think it's serving my purpose pretty good the way it is. I think everything's worked out pretty good. So we'll get started with the test on the power. Also, one more thing, I do plan on doing some similar testing, not only with this unit, but with transfer switches and backup power and some other electrical things. I'm always doing mechanical things and welding and stuff like that. And I'm a pretty young channel, but if it wouldn't be too much, I would really appreciate if you guys would hit the subscribe button and maybe the thumbs up for me. That really helps me out a lot. And I do plan on putting quite a bit more material out here to see, kind of what people think. I do enjoy reading the comments. So any questions, concerns, criticism, it's all welcome. I'm here to learn just as well as anybody else is. So really would appreciate that thumbs up and then that subscribe button if you're interested in maybe some of my future content. And then we'll link out some other videos as well as we go. Okay, so I think we're ready to go here. I have just a 5.0 Milwaukee battery, fully charged, all 4 bars. I'm going to put that in the top-off. And right now, we'll turn the top-off on. We'll switch our power inlet to the heater, to the Milwaukee top-off, and it's on right now. So right now, I think we're ready to go. We've got power coming from here. I haven't tried this before, so we'll see what happens. We're showing that we have power on the control panel for the heater. So let's see if it will actually boot up on the top off. So the fan has started. 28 amps, 29 amps, 35, 50 amp. This is watts, excuse me, watts. 60 watts, 70 watts, 75, 80 watts. And if there's a problem, my plan is just to flip this switch so that we're back on line power for this unit. 90 watts, and these top-offs claim to be 175 watts. So we'll see if we exceed that or get close enough to it to cause a problem. There, we're at 101 watts. Fuel, the glow plug is on. 111 watts. Almost got to 120 on the wattage. Fuel pump hasn't started. Still warming up with the glow plug. $114 fuel pump just kicked on. 120 watts. Just to double check my battery. We've dropped a bar. 118 watts right now. We've got glow plug, fan, and fuel pump running. And we'll scroll through and look at the amps real quick. We're at about 119 watts. 114 volts coming from the M18, and we are at 1 amp. 120 watts still. Fan speeding up. Still hovering around 120 watts. Starting to ramp up here. It would be nice if the screens were a little brighter on these units. Fan's really starting to pick up some speed. We're at 131 watts. 136. 140 watts. So we're getting pretty close to what they claim is the peak on that top-off. Obviously, the glow plug is still going. Actually, the glow plug just turned off, so that was the peak. We just dropped to 31 watts. Fan's picking up speed, fuel pump's picking up speed. We're starting to put out some heat here. On the top-off, still got 3 bars. We'll scroll through. Still kicking out 114 volts, almost 115 volts. 0.37 amps. And our peak wattage during initial startup phase was 143 watts. And right now, I would say, just from experience, this is full speed on the fan. And the glow plug is off, and the fuel pump is running as fast as I'm used to hearing it run, and we're pulling 43 watts at this time. Kicking out some pretty good heat. Still showing 3 bars, and this is just a regular red lithium XC 5.0 battery, so it's nothing special. I've got great big batteries over there if you really wanted to run this a while. Now, I don't know how long this is going to run, this heater in its full warm stage, but you can use an M18 Top-Off to start this particular diesel heater. Nice thing is being able to see exactly in real time the power consumption, and then your peak, you know, when it's at its worst, which is, you know, glow plugs on, fuel pump starting, fans running, and it's really trying to get things warming up and going. But now that it's up to full, you know, I know the heat exchanger is not at its maximum temperature yet, because you can tell by the monitor here, but it shouldn't consume any more power than it's consuming right now, because the glow plug does not need to turn back on, the fuel pump's running, and the fan's running at its maximum speed. So it'll produce more heat as that heat exchanger goes to full temp, but we shouldn't consume any more power than it is right now. Now, my kind of theory is, you know, I can run this portably if I really wanted to off of a top-off. I might do another test down the road. If you guys want to subscribe, maybe down the road I'll put different sizes of batteries fully charged on this top-off. And when I have more time out here in the garage, I'll run this thing and I'll put a timer on it, and I'll find out exactly how long it'll run on each battery on another day. But what I could also do with this transfer setup the way it is, like I said earlier, I can I can put the switch on wall power and run this unit, and I don't run it unless I'm out here. So if for some reason I lost power, or something went wrong with my power supply coming from the utility, I can run over here and flip this over to the top-off, and it should have more than plenty power to power this down, at that point, or I can keep it running for a while, depending on how those time trials go. But this is kind of interesting that you can see in real time with this power meter how much power it's using and when and why and all that stuff. So it's interesting to see that, and kind of helps me understand what I can do with this with alternative power supplies. In the first video that I linked out to, I only gave a reading on the power consumption on the 12 volt side. It's nice to see it on the 120 volt side, since I am going to be using this power converter, all the time. I do plan on getting maybe a Blue Eddy or some sort of a battery power station in the future. I just haven't done that yet. I know that would be ideal. That way you can basically feed it power through that, and then if there's a problem, the batteries take over. I just haven't gotten to that point yet. I need to do that one of these days. But the next step is I'm going to let this thing cool down, and then we're going to pull it off the wall. I'm going to take that pipe and drop it down and see if there's any water in the pipe, and if there is, how much. And it hasn't been a problem yet in a year of running this thing with the pipe all inside, but we'll see. We're going to try that now. I'm going to let it cool down a little bit, and then go from there. Actually, I do want to see if I flip this switch real quick to line power. It shouldn't interrupt this and cause a problem, and then I can turn my top off. So before I do that, let's check this out. Still 3 bars. It could have been hovering between 3 and 4 to begin with, but it does pull a lot of power in startup. So let me see if I can flip it, and this thing should power down correctly. Didn't even phase it. Didn't even sense that there was a momentary interruption in power. If you just flip that switch, kind of like a standard transfer switch works. So let's say you did want to run it on batteries, but you had other power available. You could temporarily run it on that second source of power, swap your top-off battery out, re-energize that top-off, and then switch it back if you really wanted to. So all interesting things to know. So we're going to let this thing cool down, and then we'll pull that exhaust off and drain it and see if there's anything in there. All right, I have this thing unplugged from the power supply, and the other end of that same 120 volt line is unplugged here. The exhaust is ready to pull out of the port that goes out the wall to the outside. I don't want to tip the whole unit because it's pretty full of diesel fuel. But what I plan to do is take that exhaust pipe, and I haven't done this yet, but I'm going to take that exhaust pipe and angle it down, bending the pipe only and keeping the unit level, to see if and how much water is actually in this system. This hasn't been done this season. It's been run probably 10 different times for maybe a total of 16, maybe 20 hours. I've probably put, multiple tankfuls through it. But let's see what happens here. We'll pull it off of here, and we'll see if we get any water out of this thing. Pipe's a little warm still. So you can kind of see the angle of my pipe. It does run uphill. It's been a concern for quite a few folks, but I've never drained it. So we'll see if and how much water may be in there. So that's coming straight down from the unit. If there was anything in there, it would have drained out at that moment. So makes me feel a lot better. I've had a lot of concerned comments on that. But it's good to know that I don't have an abundance of water sitting in there waiting to cause a problem or plug this unit up. So again, my theory is, this pipe is only exposed to the temperature in this garage, and it never freezes out here. So even on startup, any water that was in there would be in a liquid state. And then when it's running for some time, it runs long enough that I'm confident it burns any and all condensation that may have been in there at one time out, and throws that out the wall. And then it's dry by the time I shut the unit down. So you shut the unit down, and it doesn't combust for a whole lot longer before it's done. So I'm pretty confident that even though it runs uphill, the fact that it's inside is okay. Feel free to comment on that if you have any other ideas. Any other thoughts on power supplies? Like I said, I do plan on getting some sort of a battery power station. I don't do overland camping or anything, and I don't use solar panels, but I do so think those things have their place. So again, if you enjoyed the video, you want to see something else, drop me a comment. Really appreciate a thumbs up and a subscribe if you want to see some of these future projects. I've got lots of things on my list to do. I wouldn't mind filming them and throwing them out there and seeing what you guys think. So thanks again for watching. I'll drop links for all the original stuff that I bought for this in the description. These are Amazon affiliate links. I get a very small commission out of anything that's sold through there. Power meter is going to be a new one on there. That's a new one for me, but I've been using the snot out of this thing. I think it's extremely handy for analyzing power usage and stuff like that. So thank you for watching.